Alright guys, I'm back with another video today, and today I just wanted to talk to you guys about some what I'd like to call mythical UFC fights that I think need to happen. Now, will they happen? Some of them, probably. Most of them, no. But you know what? I like to think about sometimes, what kind of crazy fights the UFC could put on, or good challenges for fighters that they're not quite finding in their division, but could find from another fighter in a different division. Um, but regardless, it's all speculation. I don't expect a lot of it to even come to fruition, but yeah. Just let me know what you guys think of it. But yeah, so jumping straight into it, the first pairing that I wanted to talk about, the first matchup is going to be Tom Aspinall versus Hamzat Chimaev. Now, a lot of people would kind of clown me for that, just because they're like two divisions of separation from one another. But I don't think it's that big of a deal because I mean we already know Hamzat has a huge issue cutting down and making weight for fights anyways. He's already huge. He would only have to put on a few pounds and he wouldn't have to cut a lot in order to fight at lightweight. And Tom Aspinall, he just have to shave the donut really. He just have to shed the donut and maybe cut a little bit of water weight, and he'd be just fine making weight at 205. But yeah, I mean, I think that Aspinall is one of the few solutions to the problem that is Hamzat Chimaev in the UFC. That may be a little bit of a hot take, especially with Dricus' last performance. I really think that Dricus has a good opportunity to put him out. Um, but regardless, I still think that besides Dricus, there's hardly anybody who could stop him. He's been tearing up the division. Um, and so has Aspinall. Aspinall's been tearing up his division too, and I think he would beat Jones, quite frankly. But a lot of people aren't ready for that conversation yet. Anyways, he's just been marching along, and he moves with speed and power. He moves with speed that's like a light heavyweight or even a middleweight fighter, but he's just got the power of a heavyweight, and he's just crazy. Um, Both them have some serious grappling capabilities, and I think with Tom's size advantage in the octagon, I think that he'd have an easier time defending Hamzat on the takedowns and force him to use a lot of his skills that he'd actually have to develop if he wasn't a weight bully. But yeah, I mean, um, that's just about everything I really had to say about the fight. White light heavyweight, I already explained, just because it's just the middle weight division for these two guys. Now, I don't think this fight would ever happen, but it's just like an idea that I like to entertain occasionally, just because, I think both these guys would put on a pretty entertaining show from what we've seen from them so far. But yeah, moving on to the next fight, I wanted to talk about one that could definitely happen in the future and that I honestly foresee happening, and that's going to be Merab versus Alexander Pantoja. Now, skill for skill, tit for tat, I honestly think I'd have to give the fight to Pantoja. But Merab, with the recent performance he just put on at 311 against Umar, um, just definitely puts him in the consideration for bantamweight goats, if you ask me. Primarily, just looking at how crazy his cardio is and how able he is to keep up. How good of a chin he has. I think he'd just be a crazy matchup for a guy like Pantoja. And Pantoja's hard as nails too. He's got crazy submission. His striking's okay, probably better than Marab's. But it would be crazy to see how a finisher like Alexander would pair up against a cardio master, cardio king like a King Merab. And plus, they're not too far off in weight. Alexander's a little bit smaller than him, which obviously has its disadvantages. But I think generally like a I think they'd be a good matchup for each other, just quite frankly. I think what Merab lacks in striking, he makes up for takedown, and what Alexander lacks in grappling, he makes up for with his striking. And not to say that he's a crazy striker, he's just a better striker than Merab. But yeah, I mean, also like I really think this fight is probably one of the most likely of this list to happen, just because Alexander really doesn't have much else to do in the flyweight division. I mean, he's at the point to where he's a champion fighting, like, defending his belt in rematches against other dudes. That's just how prolific he's been in dominant that he's been inside of his weight division. So I think maybe a couple more fights and we'll see him taking fights at bantamweight eventually, and hopefully he's fighting for the belt when he does that. But yeah, moving on to the next guys that I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. Now, both these guys are incredibly hot in the UFC right now. I'd say probably Ilia most because he's so new and people are just really rampant to talk about, oh, like what could he do? What could he be, right? And he could be a lot. And I think he'd be a lot for a guy like Islam. Now, this would be a legendary fight. I think this would be probably one of the highest caliber fights of all time in UFC history. I also think that the fight would just look good on both of their resumes, depending on who won. I mean, for Ilya, he would be known as the guy who came in, destroyed both of the fighters with like he put to sleep both the fighters who were the top contenders in his division and are already considered goats of the sport, and then after that finishing like a record holder in the lightweight division, the most competitive division, and at that, like Islam Makhachev, of all people, just one of the craziest fighters to ever grace the UFC. He's already in the conversation for top 10 fighters of all time, if you ask me. And for Ilya to have that on his resume would just be absolutely insane, be massive for his career. And same thing with Islam. If he put away like a very, very, very skilled contender like Ilya, I think that would put him in the spot for the top lightweight of all time. Even though I already think he takes that spot, it'd be less arguable is all I'm trying to get at. But yeah, it'd be a huge test for both guys, and it just show the full extent of both of their skills. And I think it'd be an amazing fight to put on. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hopefully see it in the future. Moving on, I wanted to talk about a couple honorable mentions before I got to the last fight. The first one I wanted to talk about was Volk versus Topuria. Now, a lot of people would hate to see this fight just because they don't want to see their GOAT get knocked out a second time in a row by the same guy. But I think if Alexander has been really solid in camp in his off season too, he's been really disciplined and he has a lot of time to prepare for this fight. I think at the very least we could see a hard fought decision loss from Alexander. And at the very most, I think we could see him retaking the belt possibly. Now, that's wishful thinking on my end, just because we haven't seen much good come from Alexander just in his last two fights, really. But two knockout losses in a row can change a man forever. And it's not like he's a young buck anymore. He's an old guy. So he's really got one or two chances to show that he's still the real deal and to really put himself back in the GOAT contendership list. Or at least like in the top 5 GOAT contender list. But yeah, after that, I wouldn't mind seeing John Jones and and Alex Pereira fighting. Now, do I think it'd be a competitive fight? Maybe for the first round, maybe for the first 2 minutes. But we all know that Pereira looks like a fish out of water as soon as he gets taken down. He can hardly pull guard without looking like he just started his first BJJ class like yesterday. But he's dangerous enough on the feet that I think he would keep Jones at bay for a considerable amount of time before he got put down. And you know what? Maybe I'll walk back a little bit on my round 1 finish joust against Pereira that I just mentioned, because the more that I think about it, I mean, Miocic isn't known to be a wrestler, and we saw Jones just fight that guy, and it still took him 3 rounds to put the guy out. And Alex is just so much more dangerous on the feet than that. We know it just by looking at it. I mean, Jones looked like an infant in the ring. He didn't even look like he knew how to fight. And it took Jones 3 rounds to put him down. And Alex has just been tearing up his division, right? He's still fast, quick on his feet, really good at adapting, and he just has a crazy ability to get in a flow state. So I think if Jones has more skill than he was letting on in that fight against Miocic, and he still got it, I think this would be a very easy win for him. But if what he showed us against Stipe was the extent of his skill at this point in his career, I could really see this fight going in favor of Alex Pereira. But I guess we'll never know unless that fight actually comes to fruition. I think there's about a 50-50 shot. You know what? There's a 30% chance or 33% chance for these 3 options looking at Jones's career. He's either going to retire, he's going to fight Tom, or he's going to fight Pereira. I think those are his last 3 options within the UFC. You know what? Take that back. There's a 1% chance that he's fighting Tom Aspinall. There's a 48% chance that... Yeah, I think there's a 48% chance that he's going to... excuse me. There's a 48% chance that he's going to fight... Pajeda, and the rest of the percentage is his chance of retirement. Or I may have just gotten my words completely minced there, so ignore what I said if I sounded straight retarded. But regardless, you guys understand the idea that I'm trying to paint. The likelihood of him fighting Alex or retiring is much higher than the likelihood of him fighting Tom for whatever reason. He just refuses to actually take a fucking fight, and he's pussying out on the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, regardless, let's just go ahead and move on to my last pick for the most mythical UFC fights that Dana White could put together and show us this year. But he's not going to because he doesn't care and he doesn't even know who I am. But yeah, the last fight I'm going to be talking about is between Adesanya and Strickland 2. I think now as far as like showing dominance, I don't think this would do too much other than like just like fan service for the UFC. Just because both these guys I don't think have a shot at reclaiming the title. I mean, Izzy got choked out by Dricus, and then he just got knocked out in the second round by Imavov. So I don't think he's going to be bouncing back anytime soon in any significant capacity as far as contendership goes. And Sean just had a striking clinic put on him by the same dude like a week and a half ago. And I don't know if Sean's career is over. I'd be much slower to say that his career is over in comparison to Adesanya. But I would say at least that they've both been knocked down a peg, or at least significantly from how they once were viewed in stature by the eye of most UFC fans. But they both still have a huge fan base, and I think fans would get so stoked for a huge super fight like this. Like I think this would probably do more numbers than like a back-to-back championship fight. Than a UFC event like UFC 311 where they had two championship fights happening on the same night. I honestly think this headline alone would sell more pay-per-views than something like that. But yeah, I mean that's just about everything I have to say about it. I guess closing remarks about this fight particularly would be that if either of them won it, it put them back on the map. Izzy's really fallen off the map if you ask me. So if he were to take this fight, I think if he won it, he could he could reclaim a lot of the honor that he's lost recently. And same thing with Sean. If Sean beat a goat and really put the last nail in the coffin for Izzy, I think people would view that as a victory. They wouldn't view it as like him just dunking on a trash can because I mean Izzy is one of the greatest middleweights of all time. But people would see it as Sean showing that he's still in the game and he can still fight, amongst like the top contenders. Maybe not get the belt back, but could at least compete at that level. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's just about everything I had to talk about for today's video. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it and finally getting this script out. I had to edit it a couple times just because I wrote it so long ago. Or not even that long ago, but like a month and a half ago, and then I never got around to recording it. So I had to change a couple things around here and there after certain pay-per-views had aspired and we had seen what happened at those fights. But yeah, like I said, leave a comment, subscribe, interact. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. But that's all I got for y'all today.